Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video I am doing a video all about how I got my job and my experience in an assessment centre, because a lot of graduates are nervous about attending their first assessment centre or an interview, for example. And since I was obviously successful in this experience, I thought it would be useful if I shared my tips with you guys and gave you guys some insight into exactly what happened on the day of the assessment centre. A lot of these tips will generalise to any interview you go to or any assessment centre that you attend, but basically my job is a mental health support worker and I'll be working in a psychiatric hospital. I'm going to break down what happens on the actual day so that you guys know what to expect, and also my tips along the way. And then I'm going to move on to talk about what I did to prep before the day came. So when I say that I got this job with no prior experience, I don't mean like I had nothing on my CV. Like obviously I've done stuff in my life, but I mean I've never done a job like this before. I've never been a mental health support worker before. I think that's something that a lot of graduates face, because obviously you come out of uni and everyone wants you to have previous experience, and you just need that one kind of breakthrough job that can break you into the industry you want to go into. When I went to this assessment centre, majority of other candidates had previous experience in a similar type of job, whereas I was just there like, I graduated a month ago. Obviously I first had the initial online application. I'm not going to talk about that really in depth because the main purpose of this video is the interview and the assessment centre experience. Actually, with this job, which is really rare, they told you on the day whether you got the job or not, which is really rare, but I love that because then there's no anxious waiting around. And I had a few more interviews scheduled for later on that week, and I was like, I'm so glad I find out today, because if I get it, I'm not going to go to those interviews later. Okay, so I just want to stress this to you guys. From the moment you walk in to your assessment centre, you are being analysed. At least that's what they told me at mine. They were like, we've been watching you from the moment you walked in. We all looked at each other like, oh shit. I pretty much knew, like, from the moment I walked in I needed to stand out. And it's scary because there's 20 of you and they're looking at, when you're in a group setting, who kind of cowers away and, you know, doesn't say enough and is too shy, and who is overdoing it and being too boisterous and kind of almost aggressive, because there were people there who I could tell like, like you're overdoing it a little bit. What happens? Okay, so I walked in, I reported to reception, and then I went into the room and everyone else was there. I kind of just like started chatting to the people around me. Don't just sit there and not interact with anyone because you're feeling too shy. Make conversation, because they want to see that you're being social, that you are sociable, you can work with people, especially at this job. Like, you need to be a people person. So immediately I was talking to the person next to me and the person opposite me, and that's when I realised most people here already have had a job as a support worker or something similar in a hospital. And I was like, oh crap, like I better not have just wasted my time coming here. And then this lady came in. She was the lady who was running the whole assessment centre, and she kind of just walked us through what would happen that day. So the assessment centre consisted of a few things. First, a literacy test, then a couple of talks, first by like one of the directors, just to tell you a bit about the company and the hospital and their values, then a fellow mental health support worker, and then we were split into smaller groups and we rotated between your one-on-one interview, a tour of the wards, and a group-based activity. We had the literacy test, and we did it in that room where we started. She gave them out, and you know, she did say like, this isn't going to determine like whether you work here or not, so don't worry, it's just an exercise to kind of, you know, get you going, and it was fine. And then we moved into another room, and that's where the 2 talks commenced. And then we had an unexpected group activity just sprung upon us. We thought it was just gonna be a talk. He was like, okay, let's split you into groups, get on the floor. And we were like, I was just looking around at everyone else like, who's gonna do it first? Like, is he joking? Remember, you're being assessed in everything you do, so it's really important in those group-based activities that you're discussing ideas. Don't be just like quiet, like not coming up with anything. Try to think of stuff. But also what I realized whilst watching other people around me, as I said, like, don't be too aggressive and boisterous. Show the staff there that you can also listen to other people's ideas and take their opinions on board. So don't just be like, I need to be noticed, I need to be noticed, talk, 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 be loud, be loud, be loud. Then we had a different talk, and it was by a member of staff there who was in the position we were applying for, and he kind of just told us a day in the life and was just like, look, I'm here to calm your nerves, like, this assessment center is fine, do you guys have any questions? And I was like, are we gonna have any role play today? Because that's what I was the most terrified for, was if they made us do like group-based role play, because I didn't know what the later group-based activity task was gonna be. And role play is so scary because you really have to think on your feet. Like, for example, you come into a patient's room and you found them self-harmed. What do? And you're like, oh my God, like what? So I was so nervous, and he was like, no, there's no role play. And I was like, phew. Even during the talks where there wasn't like a group-based activity, you know, we were just listening to the employee about a day in his life. Make sure you're, you know, looking at the person, look interested, make eye contact, nod along. Like, you don't just want to sit there passively and look uninterested. And then we rotated between one-on-one interview, a tour of the different wards, and then the group-based activity. For some reason, I didn't actually go on a tour of the ward, but that's not important to talk about here. The one-on-one interview was the most important part. It was very casual. It was like a 10-minute chat. She kind of just asked, you know, why do you want this job? That's a very typical question. What kind of previous experience have you had that you think will help you in this job? So I just talked about my volunteering. And then she kind of asked things like, what does confidentiality mean to you? What does safeguarding mean to you? These are kind of typical terminologies and things that are important if you're working in healthcare. And then she asked some kind of scenario-based questions like, how would you maintain professional boundaries with the patients? And then she kind of asked me at the end, just like, what kind of ward would you be interested in working in? Do you have any questions for me? And it's really important to prepare some questions to ask at the end of your interview. What these questions should do is show that you've done your homework, basically. So this particular hospital has a project to enable career progression, and that was not something that anyone would know. Like, you'd have to research the company to know that. So I kind of asked her more about that system. I was like, how easy is it to kind of work your way up, because I know you have this project in place. And then we had the group-based activity, and that was kind of solving a riddle type problem. Again, in that scenario, they are looking for how you solve problems and how you work with other people. We had to wait for ages because they were making the decision on the day. During that time when we were waiting, the lady who was kind of in charge of the whole assessment center came in, and she kind of just gave us like the nitty-gritty about the job, like what the hours were like, the annual leave, the pay. And then we were called out of the room one by one and told whether we were successful or not. And my interviewer, she was like, I think you're amazing, I really want you to work with me on the CAMS ward. And I was so happy. Like, I almost hugged the woman, but I was like, no, Selina, like, don't do it, like, professional boundaries. So let's talk about the stuff I did leading up to the actual assessment center. So basically, there is this website, and they also have a YouTube channel called Pass My Interview. .com or something. I'll put it on the screen. How I found it was that I just started by doing a Google search by saying, you know, mental health support worker interview questions, and I found lots of different websites. And what I did was I created a list of lots of different questions, and I sorted those questions into categories. So before all of this, I did my research into the actual hospital, about their kind of services, what their values are, because as I said, you want to try and show off that knowledge and integrate it into your answers. And to do that, also look at the job description and the person's specification. So if they've said in their job description they want someone who's flexible and motivated, okay, keep that in mind. Now, one question they could ask you is, what are your strengths? You want to say something like, I believe my greatest strengths are that first, I'm flexible, and then give some evidence that you can be flexible, and secondly, that I'm motivated, and then give evidence for that as well. First category of questions were called typical questions, and these are just like questions you're probably going to get asked at any job interview. So tell me a bit about yourself, why this role, why do you want this job? And then you have skill-based / scenario-based questions. So things like, tell me about your communication skills, for example, or tell me about your ability to work in a team. So those kind of questions, or your ability to overcome a challenging or stressful situation. And then the third category of questions were knowledge questions. So these were things that are relevant to this particular role, so this is going to vary from job to job. The final category of questions I had were kind of on the job questions. Oh no, sorry, that's not the final one. There's so many categories. I think this is the second to last. Yeah. On the job questions, so kind of asking you how you would do certain things in this role. So how would you minimize risk to yourself and the patient? And then the final one were role play based questions. So things like, how would you handle an aggressive patient? What would you do if the patient runs away? Things like that. And then over like a few days, I spent so much time like trying to perfect my kind of answers, and then I made it into flashcards. I've still got the flashcards, because obviously it's all well and good doing this prep, but you need to kind of be able to learn these off by heart. It was 48 questions in total that I learned. So I really think if I didn't do prep to that extent, I wouldn't have got the job. And also be presentable, that's super important. You need to look the part as well. So I already had these like work trousers that I got from Zara, and then I went to H&M and got a black blazer to match. H&M do really good workwear if you're on a budget. And then I had this really nice shirt. It's like cream with little polka dots on it. So it's not like that boring workwear, like I still looked a little bit stylish, but it was still like formal. I bought these like smart loafer looking shoes from Topshop. They want people who they know are taking this seriously, so make sure you're dressed for the part as well. And then a final tip I wanted to give, and I don't actually know if this worked or not, but I took Calms on the morning of my interview. So Calms is a natural herbal medicine which is supposed to calm you down. I don't know if it actually worked or not, because I read online that for Calms to have an effect on your anxiety, you need to, there needs to be a build-up of it on your system. So for example, some people take them before a driving test. You need to have started taking them a few weeks prior to your driving test, for example. But I didn't think that far ahead. I just took a couple the morning of my interview, because the thing is, guys, I get so nervous, like you wouldn't believe. Even though I took Calms, let's assume that they did something to, you know, they calmed me down to some degree. I was in that interview, whilst I was talking to the woman, my voice was shaking. I don't know if it worked, but I actually feel like it did, because normally I would have been even more nervous than that. So that's a final tip. that I have for you guys maybe to consider. Some people don't react well to those kind of medications, and my mum was like, be careful because they can make you drowsy, like you don't want to be at the interview day like falling asleep, but it didn't have that effect on me. But yeah, I really hope you guys found this video useful. If you did, make sure to smash a thumbs up down below, subscribe down below if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.